Hello, Spark. You all look very nice. Thank you for inviting me back. I had the immense pleasure of being here last year, and I've worn this suit as a distraction technique. I'm having to follow quite an impressive lineup, and I think Vanya's not done something, not me. I think Vanya's done an incredible job pulling together quite the programme, and I think he and his team deserve a round of applause. My name's Matt Desmier, but that's not really who you think I am, in fact, just Dave Burse's warm-up guy. I am under no illusion that the reason you're all in this room is because you're here to see Dave Burse, in a little while, which is very fortunate for me, in fact, because... So the topic of my talk is about branding, and when I was here yesterday and I was watching Mark do his talk, and he was talking about how the future of marketing is about human-centric brands, I thought, oh crap, that's what my talk's about. And then when Kerry came up and did her talk about having memorable marketing having about an emotional connection, I was like, oh crap, that's what my talk's about. And then Denise got up this morning and was like, well, branding is about, not what you do, it's how you do it. I was like, oh man, that's what my talk's about. So if you could just make it through the next 25 minutes, then Dave Burse will be on and he'll entertain you all. So I'm actually going to talk about branding in the era of post-truth. So I've become slightly obsessed in the last 2 years with Donald Trump. And I'm just going to own up now, this talk is not about him in any way, shape or form. He's just a photogenic guy, and there are lots of pictures on Google that feature him in it. He works as a great metaphor for me in terms of what branding was, but not necessarily what it is. And again, it's just a distraction technique. What I'm actually going to be talking about is we've learned how, and Denise spoke about this brilliantly this morning, that it's about the purpose. It's about why we do what we do, and why brands are doing what you do and create that connection. But actually, I think it's more than that. I think we've moved on. I think we've evolved through that. And actually, what we really ought to be thinking about is the principles of our brand. So that's what I'm going to talk through, aided, like I say, by the very photogenic Donald Trump. So if you think about brands as being that point at which there's an identity that we're pushing out into the world, and a successful brand is the point at which that identity that we put out is connected with and meets with the image that you as an audience receive. That's when branding really comes into its own, and I'm stood in front. So, if that's what branding is, what it isn't is about putting 6-foot letters on top of everything you can. I mean, it used to be that, and that was a very successful way of branding. This is about visual identity and putting it out there, and as like Mark said yesterday, this is about consistency. But I guess we've kind of moved on from that now. So just in case you needed reminding, cameras at the ready, because the next slide is going to be worth taking a picture of. Or at least I thought it was until Mark used it yesterday. And then John used it yesterday. So we've probably seen this a few times. This is your classic sales funnel. The point of this is about branding being an important element of your marketing mix and an important element of your toolbox, because we use it when we're generating awareness. And we use it to create interest in our products and services. But more importantly, we want to use it to create retention so people keep coming back. And we use it to create advocacy, where people will go on and tell more people about it. That is the element of branding. That is what branding is all about. So we've seen this evolution of branding, though, over the past, 1,000 years. And so I just want to take you through it because it sort of puts into context what I'm talking about in terms of principles. So back in the agricultural economy, when we were selling steaks, when we lived in small villages and we didn't move within 30 kilometers of where we lived, and we bartered and exchanged for our goods and services, and we didn't really connect with the greater tribe, then slowly we evolved, and our tribes and our villages got bigger and bigger, and our cattle herds, we needed to make sure that people knew they were ours and they weren't someone else's. So the origin of the word branding is the Norse word brander, and it actually means to burn. So we branded our cattle so that we could identify our products. That was what branding was way, way back thousands of years ago. Then we move on into the early industrial age. Like I said, there's a lot of Trump pictures on Google. We moved into this early industrial age, and this is around the time of the Silk Road and spice and the spice run. And if you imagine then, we were at the 11th or 12th century, and you've got Italian and Venetian artisans making wonderful glassworks. And what they wanted to do was let people know that it was them that did it. So the Italians and Venetians started introducing watermarks into their glasswork. And then you get the first trademarks launched in the UK around the 12th century, 13th century. In fact, the first ever trademark in the UK is from a beer company called Bass, and they still use the same trademark now, nearly 800 years later. So what we're doing here is using your brand is to identify your product, and that's purely and simply all it did. And, you know, if you had your brand differentiated from another one, that was not necessarily a sign of quality, but it told you what we had. Then we move into this late industrial age, and now we've got mass communication, we've got mass production. We're talking about the 18th, the 17th, 18th, 19th century, into the 20th century. Now magazines and communication methods are pushing brands out further, and we're able now for large companies to have a promise. So now branding became about having an aspirational connection. Now this was something we wanted to belong to. So the next evolution of branding came into the idea of a promise. It wasn't just about your product. It wasn't just about differentiating you from your competitors by that's mine, that's theirs. Now it was, what can I aspire to be? What can I get my customers to aspire to want to be? And it might be around celebrity endorsements, and it might be around, you know, running large campaigns on TV and radio. And then the information age happened. And then we get into the late 20th and early 21st century, and it all changed. We go from this mass communication of large-scale communication to one-to-one communication. And all of a sudden, we're out of the realms of speaking to huge numbers of people, and we're speaking to individuals. And now we've got mass communication, but mass one-to-one communication. And rather than those celebrity endorsements happening, and rather than it being an aspiration, I want to be part of what they're belonging to, we start speaking to our peers. We start speaking to the people next to us and finding out what it is that they think. And we can start seeing through brands, and we can start seeing through the story that they're telling, and we're able to look them up, right? We're able to look them up and find out whether or not they're telling us the truth. And that's when this guy came on. So 2009, Simon Sinek did his famous TED Talk. It's the second most viewed TED Talk of all time. And, you know, it wasn't something new, but what he did was he identified it and he encapsulated it, and this idea that you had to have a purpose, that most companies or every organization that sold a product or service knew what it was that they did, and they could differentiate it that way. Some knew how they did it. There was their secret sauce and their patented processes. But very few organizations knew why they did it. And as the methods of communications changed, and as that transparency became quite an important intrinsic part of what we were using to sell things, and as an audience we wanted to find out about, knowing why you did it and the reason and the thing that you stood for became really important. So this was then the next evolution of the branding timeline. And we've seen it, right? We've seen it with the likes of Patagonia. So Patagonia is this wonderful brand in North America, started by Yvon Chouinard. He was a rock climber. He was a rock climber, and he wanted to create the best product that served him. So he made them himself, and he made these things and he hammered into the side of mountains to climb with, and they were wonderful. So his friends bought them. But actually these guys are all out in the environment. They're out in the outdoors all the time. And they realized, actually, we're leaving these metal lumps in the sides of mountains. We are causing unnecessary harm to our environment. So he changed, you know, if this is the purpose, if this is the thing that we stand for, then our product isn't matching up to that. So they changed it, and they created a product that they could pull out of the mountains. It even got to the point where they were producing T-shirts. And they looked at, we didn't want to cause any unnecessary harm. So they looked at their supply chain and their T-shirts. They found the cotton, the farms that the cotton was being taken from were using chemicals and bleaching the cotton. So they axed their number one selling product. It provided 20% of all their revenue, but because it didn't meet with their promise, with their purpose, they stopped selling it. Or we've got the likes of Tom's. We've all heard of Tom's. Blake McCroskey was over in Buenos Aires learning to be a polo player, as you do, out and about with some of the locals, and he noticed that they were giving shoes away. And the joy that was found in what he just took for granted as an item of clothing that he could get, and he had hundreds of pairs at home, and yet he was seeing the look on the faces of these young people when they had a pair of shoes and the difference it could make. So he started a company with a sole purpose, not of making profit, but of helping people in need. That was the idea of a real purpose-driven company. And now they make shoes, they sell bags, they sell glasses. You can even buy Tom's coffee, and if you buy the coffee, they give water or place water in places that can't get it. Or Tata. So Tata make cars. This is India's largest conglomerate. They provide power stations and infrastructure, and they build schools, and they make cars. But the thing that these guys do is they understand that their purpose isn't to drive a profit. Their purpose is to improve the quality of the lives of the communities that they serve, that they employ people in communities, so it was incumbent upon them that they should be doing something back. So as Denise was saying, this isn't about giving back. This is about the brand as the business having a place in that community. So 20% of their profits are given back to the communities that they're in. And they use that money to build schools to improve the lives of everyone. But it's not just about having a purpose and paying lip service to it. So I know Denise used Amazon earlier on as a brilliant company, and actually their purpose to be the earth's most customer-centric business is a great purpose. You can't really argue with that. However, the way in which they do that might be, or the impact of them trying to achieve that purpose might not necessarily be what we want, right? There is a potential that them wanting to be the earth's most customer-centric company is having a negative effect on your high streets. It's having a negative effect on the retail environments. Them being the most customer-centric company they can and running their warehouses purely with robots and not employing people is not necessarily having a positive impact on the communities that they're serving. Or maybe it's Google. So Google's purpose to organize the world's information is a really wonderful purpose. You can't really knock that as being something to aspire towards. However, if by organizing the world's information, you then become a gatekeeper to other people's putting their information up there, and if I as a person want to put my information up there, and in order to get to page one, I've now got to pay for the privilege to be part of their organizing mechanism, that's going to have a negative impact on small businesses. That's going to have a negative impact on the kinds of people that want to put their information up there. Or Facebook. Facebook's purpose to bring the world closer together is a laudable purpose. And, the fact that my mum and my family can see what I'm doing over here in Montenegro, and I can tell the world all the great things I'm doing, thanks to the power of Facebook. I can look up old school friends who I've probably been trying my best to avoid for years. And now, thanks to the power of Facebook, I can find them and they can find me. So that is a great purpose. However, it might be that the way in which they enact that purpose is not necessarily a positive thing. The way in which they enact that purpose, the principles by which they push their purpose forward, is not necessarily positive, to the point that last week, when Mark Zuckerberg came and spoke to the European Parliament, Guy Verhofstadt, the Belgian politician, asked him the question of, do you want to be remembered as the internet giant who enriched people's lives, or do you want to be remembered as the genius that created a digital monster that destroyed democracies and societies? I'm sure it's the former, right? But have they, although their purpose of bringing the world closer together is laudable, is a positive thing, is the way in which they're doing it the right thing? Have they thought through the impact of their purpose? I mean, you could look at someone like United Airlines, connecting people and uniting the world. This is an airline that flies out of most major cities in the US. They're connecting people. They're enabling people to live thousands of miles apart, but connect all the time. However, so this is a good thing. But the way in which it is enacted out is not necessarily a good thing. That they might have to rethink their principles about how it is that they're trying to connect the world, how it is that they're trying to bring people together. And you can't argue that making America great again is a really good purpose. It was a really good idea. It was actually, we need to generate more jobs. We need to lower increase employability. We want to increase turnover. We want to make sure that America is the powerhouse that's driving industrial change in the world. However, the principles by which it perhaps got acted out weren't necessarily thought through particularly well. And actually, did the promise, did the identity that was being put forward to make America great again, did that meet with the image that the general public received? Because brands are built on what people are saying about you. They're not built on what you're saying about yourself. Actions speak much, much louder than words. And in this information age now, where it is mass one-to-one communication and this huge amount of transparency, you've got to get it right. Because we have evolved. We've evolved now, and brands are living, breathing things. Well, metaphorically breathing. They're living things and they're growing things. And so, all of that, no one's saying that the product wasn't right, the promise wasn't right, the purpose wasn't right, but now we're a much more enlightened audience and it's about principles. These three undoubtedly get it right. These three undoubtedly get the principles that actually, if we don't want to cause unnecessary harm to the environment, then perhaps sourcing our cotton from factories that bleach the cotton and use chemicals into the environment is great. If we want to help people, then we've got to put our money where our mouth is. But these aren't the only companies that are doing it. This is Mark Constantine. Mark Constantine is the founder, the co-founder of Lush. Lush is the cosmetic firm it's in the UK, but they've got 900 stores in 60 countries around the world. They sell soap, right? They sell soap. It's very little other than soap. Their purpose, and I know Denise said earlier about it being light and fluffy, their purpose is to make our mums proud. A brilliant purpose to have. They understand that actually by having happy people making happy soap and then making sure that they are the face of the brand, it will make their mums proud. So, when Brexit happened in the UK, Mark Constantine was aware that 50% of his staff were EU nationals and that they were worried about what their future was going to be. So he has promised every single member of staff that if you want to continue working for Lush, you can continue working for Lush. To the point where he's opened up a factory in Cologne and he has offered that he will pay to repatriate any member of staff and their families to Germany if they want to continue working for Lush. Because he knows that having happy people making happy soap will make his mum proud. And that's a great purpose. But they've gone further than that. And when I mentioned about Patagonia and them looking at their supply chain, and Patagonia looked at their supply chain to the point where they said, the cotton is being sourced from farms that use bleach. These guys look at their supply chain even further, and they go to the point where actually, if our oil is being sourced from a country, what's that country's stance on certain things? So they're now funding campaigns in Mexico to ensure that there is free internet access to everyone in Mexico. This is the front page of they're a soap company, by the way. They sell soap. Let's not forget that. This is their homepage at the moment. They have just funded a film, a documentary that's looking into the Cambridge Analytica and the data manipulation scandal of Facebook to understand how data might be affecting our democracies, because they believe, as a global ethical business, it is incumbent upon them to lead by example, and that they should not be using data in dangerous ways, in manipulative ways, that they don't want other people to, and they want their fans and their advocates to know what's happening to their data. They sell soap. Or you've got this guy, right, so this is a farmer, Guy Watson. He lives in the southwest of the UK. In 1986, he started delivering fresh vegetables to local restaurants. And these vegetables were really nice vegetables. They were farmed sustainably. So local restaurants started to want to buy into this. He now runs a company that employs 650 people and has a 60 million turnover, delivering fresh vegetables to families and to restaurants. He did not start this company for profit. He started this company because he had a farm and he needed to sell his stuff. And he knew that he had good vegetables, and he knew that people's lives would be better if they ate fresh vegetables. So that's what he wanted to do. He now owns 5 or 6 farms across the south of England and some in the north of France. But he wants to retire. And now he's faced with an issue. He's having a positive impact on a lot of people's lives, but what should happen next? What should his legacy be? If he sells to a VC, if he takes some kind of investment from it, then he's got a legal obligation to drive shareholder value. And in order to drive shareholder value, that legal obligation will mean his prices have got to go up and the profit have got to go down. So what he's doing is he's selling the company to the staff. He's currently going through a process where 76% of the company is going to be sold back to the 650 staff that work there. So that those 650 staff have a vested interest in making sure that the purpose of that company is writ large and is out there constantly and is a constantly moving feast. Those 650 members of staff will share in the £20 million annual profits that they make, and it creates a legacy for him. But then there are other companies as well. So this is my last case study. You'll be pleased to know we're 5 minutes away from Dave. This is a digital agency based out in Scotland called Signal. They're a small digital agency. They've recently been through the process. So this case study was only published about 2 weeks ago. But they went through a process of understanding, if we understand our culture, then our clients will benefit from this. If we understand our brand is the center of everything that we do, then our clients will benefit. So they've created this as their purpose. They want to be the place where people go to do the best work of their careers. That is the reason they exist. At no point in their purpose do they mention clients, do they mention profit, do they mention money at all. All they are talking about is their people doing their best work of their careers. It's all internal, just as Denise was talking about earlier. And in order to bring this purpose to life, they have 4 guiding principles. And these 4 guiding principles, again, don't mention company, don't mention profit, don't mention clients, don't mention money. Every single one of them is focused on their people in their business. These are the principles by which this company is committed to work. And they've done this because they understand that if they have purpose and principles, then the management who lead by example will create a set of shared beliefs within that company. And those shared beliefs will create a vibrant culture. And a vibrant culture, an exciting place to work, will mean you will create your great work. And if you are creating great work, your clients will undoubtedly be happy. And if your clients are happy, you can't help but make money. So they don't need to think about the money. They don't need to think about the profit. All they need to know is it all comes back to their purpose, but more than that, the principles by which they deliver that purpose. Because in this day and age, successful brands are transparent. They're honest. They have integrity. They are consistent, as Mark was talking about yesterday, and they're reliable. Because successful brands in this day and age have principles. It's not just about the purpose. It's about how you deliver that. Yes, you have to have a good product. And yes, your product has to be different from your client, from your competitors. And yes, there is a promise, and you want to be something that someone aspires to work with or be part of or have some engagement with. And you really ought to have a purpose. There is a reason now in this day and age why we are on this planet and why we're doing this work. But above all else, you've got to have strong principles. There has to be a reason behind your purpose and a way in which you work that drives it forward, because actually we'll all go on the internet and we'll ask our friends and our peers and we'll see through some thinly veiled excuse of lip service. Thank you very much.